I pushed open the door to conference room B instead of A and froze. 5 people in expensive suits looked up simultaneously from medical charts spread across a glass table. My heart slammed against my ribs as I realized my mistake. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, backing away. "Wrong room." "Actually," the oldest woman said, her silver-streaked hair cut in a sharp bob that matched her calculating gaze. "Stay." She gestured to an empty chair while the other 4 executives exchanged silent glances. The beige conference room, with its windowless walls, seemed to shrink around me. "We need someone with your background," she continued, closing a folder marked confidential. "Community health analysis, correct? Annette mentioned your work." My mouth went dry. I'd been with the company barely 6 months. The youngest executive, a man with blindingly white teeth and manicured nails, tapped his tablet. "Your research mapping treatment outcomes in lower-income neighborhoods is exactly what we need." I slid into the offered chair, confusion mingling with rising dread. The table displayed medical charts, demographic maps, and spreadsheets with highlighted dollar amounts in the millions. "This stays in this room," the silver-haired woman said. "We've developed an algorithm that identifies which insurance claims to strategically deny." The man beside her nodded. "Early-stage treatments in specific neighborhoods. Nothing immediately life-threatening." By the time conditions progress to qualify for mandatory coverage," another woman added, "we've saved millions in preventative care costs." I stared at them, struggling to mask my horror. "And the patients?" The silver-haired woman shrugged. "Treatment is still available once their condition meets critical thresholds. The beauty is regulatory oversight only tracks denials that result in fatalities within a specific time frame." The youngest man leaned forward. "50 million in performance bonuses once fully implemented. Split between us." I nodded mechanically, my eyes drawn to a familiar pattern on one of the charts. The demographic markers, denial sequences, treatment gaps, they matched exactly what happened to Lizzie 3 years ago. My childhood best friend, her early-stage treatment denied. By the time her symptoms qualified for coverage, aggressive intervention came too late. They didn't know I held her hand during her final hours. The silver-haired woman misinterpreted my silence as hesitation. "You're perfect for this team. Your community health background helps us predict which denial patterns will escape attention." I swallowed hard. "I have ideas to improve your system." The words tasted like poison, but the silver-haired woman smiled. "Excellent. Welcome aboard, Miss K," I answered, forcing a smile that concealed the rage building inside me. "Mira K." If you've ever had that moment where you discovered something that changed everything about your life, hit that like button and subscribe to hear stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word. I never planned to become a spy. Before that meeting, I was just Mira, the quiet data analyst who brought homemade cookies to office potlucks and spent weekends hiking with my rescue dog, Pepper. 32 years old with an apartment full of plants and a degree in public health that had landed me a respectable job at a healthcare analytics firm. People always described me as careful, methodical, the one who color-coded her calendar and triple-checked restaurant bills. My mother called it being responsible. My ex called it being boring before he left for someone more spontaneous. But being careful meant I noticed patterns others missed. It meant I remembered details that seemed insignificant until they weren't. Like how Lizzie's insurance denial letters all came on Tuesdays. How her appeals disappeared into administrative black holes. How the customer service representatives read from identical scripts when I called on her behalf while she grew too weak to hold the phone. What these executives didn't know was that I hadn't joined their company by accident. After Lizzie died, I spent months tracking the insurance denials that killed her. The trail led to this firm, with its sterile hallways and mission statement about optimizing healthcare resource allocation. I applied, waited, prepared, but I never expected to stumble directly into the architects of the system that took her from me. Now, sitting among them with their expensive watches and casual cruelty, I realized my careful nature had finally found its purpose. They thought they were recruiting an analyst. They had no idea they'd just invited in their destruction. Lizzie and I met in 3rd grade when she shared her lunch after bullies tossed mine into a puddle. For 20 years after that, she remained the brightest part of my life, the friend who knew all my secrets, who stayed up all night when my father died, who convinced me to apply to college when I was ready to give up. She was a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that made strangers smile and a habit of adopting stray animals. "The broken ones need us most," she'd say, nursing yet another 3-legged cat or blind guinea pig back to health. The headache started 3 summers ago, mild at first, then persistent enough for a doctor's visit. The initial diagnosis suggested early-stage treatment, expensive, but effective. Her insurance denied it as experimental. We appealed. They denied again, recommending standard observation protocols. While we navigated paperwork labyrinths, the headaches worsened. Vision changes followed. By the time her symptoms qualified for the approved treatment pathway, the tumor had grown. I spent her final weeks sleeping in a hospital chair, watching machines monitor her decline. The night before she died, during a rare moment of clarity, she squeezed my hand. "Promise you'll still find joy," she whispered. I promised, not knowing how I could keep it. After the funeral, I requested her complete medical records. The hospital was reluctant, but eventually relented to my persistence. I created a timeline of every denial, every appeal, every delayed approval. Patterns emerged. This wasn't random bureaucratic cruelty. It was systematic, algorithmic. I tracked similar cases, mapping denial clusters against demographic data. The evidence pointed to a deliberate strategy. The healthcare analytics firm that created these patterns hired me 6 months ago. I arrived with a fabricated resume, highlighting my data skills while concealing my connection to Lizzie. Every day I smiled at people who never knew I spent nights constructing a case against their company. And now, through a mistaken door, I'd found the architects themselves. 5 people who spoke about preventable suffering as cost optimization, who never saw the kindergartners making get-well cards for their absent teacher, who never held someone's hand while they struggled to remember your name after 20 years of friendship. The silver-haired woman, Gloria, was clearly their leader. The youngest man, Drake, handled the technological implementation. The others, Vince, Penny, and Tomas, managed regulatory compliance, financial projections, and medical oversight respectively. They operated as a closed unit, keeping their projects secret even within the company. They called it the Threshold Initiative. I called it murder by spreadsheet. For 5 months, I became essential to their operation. Each day required a perfect performance, enthusiastic enough to earn their trust, restrained enough to appear professional. I suggested enhancements to their system, subtle modifications that created traceable patterns while appearing to improve efficiency. I guided which patient groups to target while secretly documenting every decision. Weekends, I volunteered at community clinics, identifying patients affected by similar denial patterns. My apartment wall transformed into an investigation board hidden behind a curtain. Each night I added to my shadow database tracking every case, creating a comprehensive map of their operation. The close calls accumulated. Once, Gloria questioned why I needed access to historical data. Establishing baselines, I explained, maintaining eye contact despite my racing pulse. We need to understand normal denial rates to avoid patterns that might trigger regulatory attention. She studied me for uncomfortably long seconds before nodding. Smart, I knew you were the right addition. Another time, Tomas, their tech specialist, nearly discovered my hidden code during a system review. "What's this subroutine?" he asked, pointing to a section of code I'd written to extract data. My mouth dried instantly. "That's the custom filter for demographic variables," I said, reaching over to scroll to another section. "But I'm more concerned about this security vulnerability. Anyone with basic access could potentially view the executive summary reports." His attention successfully diverted to the genuine flaw I'd identified. My extraction code remained undiscovered. The hardest moments came during their casual lunch conversations, listening to them joke about creative resource allocation while I remembered Lizzie's funeral, watching them calculate bonus distributions while I calculated how many patients would suffer under their system. Some nights, running calculations on my potential share of their promised $50 million, I considered taking the money and helping affected patients directly. With that much, I could fund an entire clinic. But it wouldn't stop the system they were building, a system designed to replicate across other insurance providers. Everything hinged on the handoff meeting, when they would transfer their completed system to insurance company partners. I had volunteered to create the transition protocol, and they had eagerly agreed, impressed by my attention to detail. "This implementation will define healthcare cost management for decades," Gloria told me, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. "You'll never have to worry about money again." I smiled back. "I'm counting on it." The night before the handoff, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at Lizzie's photo. "I found a way," I whispered to her image. "But it's not what you would have chosen." My phone chimed with a text from Drake, Last chance to back out, Mira. Once tomorrow happens, we're all committed. I stared at his message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What I planned risked everything. My career, possibly my freedom. If I failed, they would destroy me professionally, and maybe worse. I thought of Lizzie's last coherent words to me. Promise you'll still find joy. I texted back, I'm all in. The morning arrived clear and cold. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that cost a month's salary, an investment in appearing as polished as the others. My entire plan depended on maintaining absolute composure for exactly 90 minutes. I arrived early to prepare the conference room, setting up the presentation materials and checking my hidden programs one final time. A last-minute code adjustment, a triple check of my emergency backup. Gloria arrived first, immaculate in designer navy, diamond earrings catching the light. Nervous? She asked, noticing my tight grip on my tablet. Excited, I corrected, forcing relaxation into my shoulders. This is what we've worked for. She smiled, patting my arm. You've exceeded every expectation, Mira. I've already spoken to the board about creating a permanent position for you on the executive team. The others filtered in, followed by representatives from 3 major insurance companies. Introductions circled the room: senior vice presidents, chief medical officers, legal counsel. Gloria introduced me with understated pride. Our data architect, she called me, the final piece that made our system truly exceptional. The insurance executives nodded politely, unaware that I had spent the night ensuring their companies would never implement the system they came to purchase. As Gloria began her opening remarks, I connected my tablet to the main presentation screen. My pulse thundered in my ears as I navigated to the presentation file. Everything, my revenge, my promise to Lizzie, justice for thousands of patients, depended on what happened in the next 20 minutes. I clicked open the file, and for a terrible second, nothing happened. The screen remained blank. Then the screen flickered to life. My custom presentation loaded, showing the innocent-looking dashboard Gloria and the team had approved. The faces around the table relaxed. I steadied my breathing. The Threshold Initiative represents a breakthrough in claims management, I began, reciting the practiced words while my thumb hovered over the hidden command on my tablet. As you'll see in this demonstration, we've created a system that identifies optimal denial pathways while maintaining regulatory compliance. I walked the executives through the surface features, watching their eyes light up at projected savings. Numbers scrolled across the screen, millions in avoided costs, each dollar representing a real person denied care that could prevent suffering. The key innovation, I continued, is how the system remains undetectable to oversight agencies. Drake nodded enthusiastically from across the table. Show them the demographic sequencing, Mira. This was the moment. I tapped a sequence on my tablet that looked like a standard navigation gesture but activated my hidden program. The system includes an automatic oversight function, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The screen transformed, displaying a different interface than what my team had ever seen. It identifies denial patterns and flags potential discrimination. Before anyone could react, the screens around the room filled with thousands of actual patient cases, all connected to test versions of their system, already quietly implemented in select markets over the past 3 months. Gloria half rose from her chair. This isn't the approved presentation, she hissed. I continued as if I hadn't heard her. This oversight function has been running for months, documenting every denied claim, every patient outcome, and every executive decision. The insurance executives exchanged alarmed glances. One opened his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. What you're seeing, I explained, is the actual impact of denials already implemented in test markets, not theoretical projections, real patients. I clicked to the next screen. Patient 4,372, denied preventative treatment last quarter. Current status, hospitalized with advanced symptoms. Projected cost difference, $246,000 in additional treatment. Patient 5,980. 1. Single mother, denied early intervention, current status, disability leave, unable to work. 3 dependents, now receiving state assistance. Drake lunged toward the main computer station but stopped when I added, the system doesn't just track past decisions, it predicts outcomes. Like which executives will be implicated when patients suffer, whose career will survive, and what partnering with these people will cost you in lawsuits and penalties. I clicked again. The screen showed the 5 executives' names, alongside predicted financial penalties based on existing case law. The numbers were staggering. "This data has been backed up to secure servers," I said calmly. "The complete analysis has also been scheduled for delivery to regulatory agencies and select journalists if tampering is detected." One by one, the insurance executives closed their laptops. The oldest among them, a man with steel gray hair, stood up. "This meeting is over," he announced. "Our company will not be pursuing this partnership." The others followed, murmuring about legal exposure and reputation management. No one made eye contact with Gloria or her team as they filed out. The door closed, leaving me alone with 5 people whose careers I had just destroyed. Gloria's face transformed with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said simply. "I've shown them exactly what you planned to do." Drake grabbed my arm. "Where's the real presentation? Fix this now and maybe we can salvage." "There is no other presentation," I said, pulling away from his grip. "This is the real system, the one you've been testing for months." Penny's face had gone pale. "Testing? We haven't implemented anything yet." "You didn't," I agreed. "But I did. Those pilot programs you authorized in 3 markets? I modified them to track every outcome, every patient affected, every dollar saved at the expense of human suffering." Their phones began ringing simultaneously. Board members, legal counsel, supervisors from every level suddenly aware something had gone catastrophically wrong. The silver-haired woman who'd first invited me to stay grabbed my arm as I moved toward the door. "You could have changed your life with that money. $50 million. I thought of Lizzie's hand in mine as the monitors flatlined. "I just did." I walked out, leaving behind their systems still running on screens, now calculating the precise financial cost of their collapsing scheme. No dramatic arrests, no public showdown. Just the cold math of consequences, turning their own weapon against them. In the elevator, my legs finally began to shake. 3 years of grief, 6 months of planning. It was done. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Smart play. Need to talk. Central Park, Bethesda Fountain, 1 hour." I stared at the message, wondering which of the insurance executives had sent it. This wasn't part of my plan. I had expected to clean out my desk and disappear before the full fallout began. But curiosity, the same trait that had helped me unravel their scheme, won out. "Who is this?" I texted back. The reply came instantly. "Someone who knows about Lizzie Adams." My blood froze. I had never mentioned Lizzie to anyone at the company. Her connection to me wasn't in any public record. I had been meticulously careful. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Security guards stood near the entrance, but they weren't looking for me yet. I walked past them, fighting the urge to run. Outside, autumn air hit my face. I had imagined this moment differently, a sense of triumph, perhaps, or at least relief. Instead, fear crawled up my spine. Someone knew about Lizzie. Someone knew why I'd done this. I hailed a cab to Central Park, checking constantly for followers. The fountain area was busy with tourists taking photos and children chasing pigeons. I found an empty bench with a clear view of all approaching paths and waited. 15 minutes passed. My phone remained silent. No mysterious strangers approached. Then a woman sat beside me. She wore a simple gray coat and carried a coffee cup, mid-40s, with short brown hair and unremarkable features. Nothing about her screamed corporate or executive. "Mira Kay," she said, not looking at me but watching the fountain. Or should I say, "Mira Collins. You changed your name after college." I tensed, ready to leave. "Don't go," she said quietly. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer you a job." I almost laughed. "A job? I just torpedoed a multi-million-dollar corporate initiative. I'll be unhireable within hours." She sipped her coffee. "Not with us. We've been tracking the Threshold initiative for months. We knew something was happening, but couldn't get inside. Then you appeared." "Who is we?" "Patient Protection Alliance," she said. "Private watchdog organization. We monitor healthcare companies for precisely this kind of exploitation." I'd heard of them, a small but respected advocacy group, known for their investigative work. "Why should I trust you?" She finally turned to look at me. "Because I knew Elizabeth Adams. Not well, but I interviewed her 3 weeks before she died. She was trying to report what happened to her, but she was too sick to follow through. Her records disappeared from the hospital system after her death." My throat tightened. I kept copies. I know, she nodded. You've been very thorough, more than we expected. You've been watching me? Since you applied at Healthcare Analytics Partners, your background check was too perfect, the gaps too neatly filled. She handed me a business card with just a phone number. What you did today will stop one initiative, but there are others. Different companies, different algorithms, same outcome. We need people who can recognize the patterns. I stared at the card. You're offering me a job as what? Corporate spy? Patient advocate with specialized skills, she corrected. The money's terrible compared to what you just walked away from, but you'll sleep better. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The company's stock had dropped 12% in the last hour. Unusual trading activity had triggered regulatory attention. They'll come after you, she warned. Not just legally. They'll try to discredit you, paint you as unstable, vindictive. Having institutional support will help. I need time to think, I said, slipping her card into my pocket. She stood. You have until tomorrow. After that, things get complicated for everyone. As she walked away, another text arrived on my phone from Drake. This isn't over. We know what you did. The next 12 hours passed in a blur. I returned to my apartment long enough to collect my pre-packed emergency bag, my laptop, and Pepper. My neighbor had agreed weeks ago to watch my plants if I needed to travel suddenly. I left her a note and my spare key. At a hotel across town, I checked in under a name I'd established months earlier, paying cash for 3 nights. In the room, I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi through multiple proxies and checked the developing story. Healthcare Analytics Partners had announced an internal review of unauthorized testing protocols. 2 board members had resigned. The stock continued falling in after-hours trading. Industry forums buzzed with rumors about what had happened in that meeting room. I ordered room service for dinner, feeding Pepper bits of my hamburger while scrolling through encrypted messages from my network of clinic contacts. Reports were coming in of suddenly approved claims, insurance companies frantically reviewing denials that matched the patterns I'd exposed. At midnight, I finally allowed myself to open the small box I'd brought with me. Inside lay Lizzie's medical bracelet from her final hospital stay. I'd kept it as a reminder of my promise to her. I found joy today, I whispered, running my finger over the embossed name. It just looked different than we thought it would. My burner phone rang, the woman from the park. Turn on channel 8, she said without preamble. The local news showed Gloria leaving the company headquarters, surrounded by reporters. Her composed facade had cracked, showing the desperation beneath. These allegations are completely unfounded, she was saying. Our company has always prioritized patient outcomes. The reporter's voice cut in. Sources inside the company claim test markets showed increased hospitalization rates, directly correlated with new denial protocols. Can you comment on that? Gloria's face tightened. No comment at this time. The woman on the phone spoke again. They're looking for you. Your identity hasn't leaked yet, but it will. Have you decided? Through the window of my hotel room, I could see the city lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, patients were getting calls about reconsidered claims, treatments suddenly approved, lives potentially saved, but also people hunting for me, executives whose millions had evaporated, a system wounded but not destroyed. If I join you, I said, I want to go after the others, all of them. That's why we want you, she replied. Get some sleep. We'll contact you with a meeting location in the morning. I ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Pepper curled against my side, his warm weight, a comfort in the anonymous room. My revenge against Gloria's team was just the beginning. The system that killed Lizzie was bigger than 5 people in a conference room. It spanned companies, crossed state lines, hid behind bureaucratic language, and complex algorithms. I had struck the first blow, but the real fight was just starting. As I drifted towards sleep, my phone lit up with one final message, from a number I didn't recognize. Thank you. My mother's treatment was approved today after 6 denials. Whatever you did, it worked. I stared at the message, wondering which of the thousands of cases I'd tracked had reached this unexpected happy ending. For the first time since entering that conference room by mistake, I felt something beyond anger or determination. Hope, small but persistent, like the first spark of a fire that could eventually burn down an entire corrupt system. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but tonight I had kept my promise to Lizzie. I had found joy in the most unexpected place, revenge served, not cold, but healing warm. Morning arrived with sharp clarity. I woke disoriented before remembering, Hotel room. Revenge underway. Life irrevocably changed. Pepper whined softly from the foot of the bed, his routine disrupted. Sorry, buddy, I whispered, scratching behind his ears. Normal isn't on the menu anymore. My burner phone chimed with a message containing an address and time, 10 a.m., a coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood. I showered quickly, dressed in nondescript clothes from my emergency bag, and triple-checked that my laptop's encryption was active. The local news played quietly as I prepared to leave. The healthcare analytics partner's story had moved from business sections to front-page headlines. Internal whistleblower exposes healthcare Daniel Sheem, blazed across the screen. I paused, watching with a mixture of satisfaction and terror as a company spokesperson delivered carefully crafted damage control. We take these allegations seriously, conducting a thorough investigation, committed to patient outcomes. Empty words from people scrambling to distance themselves from disaster. A knock at my hotel room door sent ice through my veins. Too early for housekeeping. I hadn't ordered room service. Ms. Jones? Called a woman's voice, using the false name I'd checked in under. Front desk message. I approached silently, Pepper at my heels. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman in a hotel uniform holding an envelope. Leave it, please. I called through the door. I need a signature, she replied. Slide it under the door. A pause. Of course, ma'am. A white envelope appeared beneath the door. I waited until her footsteps receded before retrieving it. Inside was a single note card. Meeting location compromised. Go to backup site B. Bring everything. H. My pulse quickened. The Patient Protection Alliance woman hadn't mentioned backup sites. She hadn't signed with an initial. This wasn't from her. I grabbed my phone and typed a careful message to the number she'd called from yesterday. Weather looking bad today. Still meeting? The response came quickly. Weather's fine. Original plan stands. A trap. Someone knew I was here. Someone trying to intercept me before I reached the Alliance. I packed in 3 minutes flat, erasing all traces of my presence. With Pepper on his leash and my bag over my shoulder, I bypassed the elevator for the emergency stairs, exiting through a service door that led to an alley. Rain had started falling, providing welcome cover as I navigated side streets, doubling back twice to ensure I wasn't followed. At a corner store, I purchased an umbrella and baseball cap, basic disguise elements that wouldn't attract attention. The coffee shop came into view 15 minutes early. I circled the block, scanning for suspicious vehicles or people who seemed too interested in the entrance. Nothing obvious, but my skin prickled with awareness that multiple groups were hunting for me now. Inside, the shop was half full with morning customers. I ordered a tea and chose a table with my back to the wall, clear sight lines to all entrances. Pepper settled under the table, alert but quiet. At exactly 10 a.m., the brown-haired woman from the park entered. She scanned the room, nodded almost imperceptibly when she spotted me, and ordered before joining my table. Someone found my hotel, I said without preamble. She sipped her coffee, unsurprised. Gloria hired private security overnight. Former intelligence types. They're good. How did they track me? Your old phone, probably. You should ditch it completely. I had powered it off but kept it with me for emergency access to certain files. A rookie mistake. Someone left a note directing me to a backup site B, I told her. Her expression tightened. We don't use letter designations. That was them. She passed me a plain paper bag under the table. Burner laptop. New phone. Use only these from now on. I slipped the bag into my larger one. What happened after I left yesterday? Chaos. The board called an emergency meeting. The insurance companies pulled all partnership discussions. The algorithm developers are claiming they didn't understand the clinical implications. And Gloria? Under internal investigation but fighting back. She's claiming the demonstration was manipulated to show false outcomes. I smiled thinly. The data is real. She knows. That's why she's desperate to find you before you talk to regulators. She leaned forward. Which brings me to why we're here. The Healthcare Oversight Commission wants a statement. My tea suddenly tasted bitter. You promised institutional protection. You'll have it, but your evidence needs an official home. Somewhere even Gloria's connections can't touch it. She was right. My leverage depended on the information becoming too public to bury. When? Tomorrow morning. We've arranged secured transport to Washington. I hesitated. This was moving faster than I'd anticipated. What about the other companies? The wider system? One battle at a time, Mira. Establish credibility with this case, then we expand. The coffee shop door opened, and a man in a charcoal suit entered. Nothing about him screamed threat, but the woman's posture changed subtly. "Time to go," she murmured. "Separately, you first." Outside, the rain had intensified. I walked 6 blocks, randomly choosing directions, before hailing a cab to a different hotel across town. The driver glanced curiously at Pepper but didn't comment when I offered extra cash. In my new room, I powered up the burner laptop. News sites showed healthcare analytics partners' stock in freefall. Trading had been temporarily suspended. A second board member had resigned. My new phone buzzed with a message from the Alliance woman. Confirmed meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Sending secure transport, 7 a.m. Location follows. She included an address for a small airport outside the city. Private flight to avoid commercial terminals. Smart. I spent the afternoon organizing my evidence. 3 years of research. 6 months of infiltration. Thousands of patient records showing the algorithm's impact. The original code with Gloria's team's digital fingerprints. Meeting recordings I'd secretly captured, disguised as system audio tests. Enough to bury them completely. As evening approached, doubts crept in. What if Gloria's team had planted countermeasures I hadn't discovered? What if the Alliance wasn't what they claimed? What if regulatory capture meant even damning evidence would disappear into bureaucratic limbo? I messaged the clinic network I'd built during my investigation, healthcare workers who'd helped identify affected patients. Status update on previously flagged cases? Responses trickled in throughout the evening. 3 approvals today. Patient 44 got treatment authorization this morning. Insurance company called to review. Previously denied claim. The system was already reacting, trying to cover tracks by suddenly approving what they deliberately denied. Too late for some, but potentially life-saving for others. At midnight, I allowed myself 2 hours of fitful sleep before continuing preparations. The hotel room television provided background noise until a familiar face appeared on screen. Drake, the youngest executive from Gloria's team. He looked haggard, his polished appearance replaced by obvious stress. As Chief Technology Officer, I want to clarify that I had no knowledge of how this algorithm was being implemented, he stated to reporters outside his apartment building. My role was purely technical. The ethical implications were never fully disclosed to me. I laughed bitterly. He'd been the one most excited about the bonus millions, practically salivating over projected figures during planning meetings. The interview continued, Drake distancing himself further from Gloria, with each careful statement. When concerns were raised by certain team members, they were dismissed. I personally questioned several implementation protocols. Pure fiction. He'd never questioned anything except how quickly they could scale the system to more markets. The reporter pressed. Sources indicate the whistleblower was part of your immediate team. Did you have any indication of their concerns? Drake's expression flickered, anger quickly masked by practiced sincerity. I believe this individual felt unable to bring their concerns through proper channels. Our company culture clearly needs examination to understand why. The audacity was breathtaking. He was repositioning himself as a potential ally to the whistleblower, to me, while private security hunted me across the city. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Another company, National Health Solutions, had announced a preventative review of their claims processing system. Their stock had dropped 20% on speculation they used similar algorithms. The dominoes were beginning to fall beyond Gloria's team. The wider system was feeling tremors. Morning came too quickly. I gathered my evidence, secured Pepper's leash, and checked out of the second hotel at 6 a.m. The car would arrive in an hour to take me to the airport. I found a quiet diner nearby, ordered coffee I couldn't taste, and waited. My revenge was working, but still fragile. Everything depended on what happened today. A television behind the counter showed Gloria entering a black SUV surrounded by security. The headline crawl read, Healthcare Analytics CO Denise Knowledge of Algorithm Mizus. My phone buzzed at 6:45 a.m. Car arriving early, black sedan. Driver will use code phrase, morning delivery. 15 minutes ahead of schedule. I gathered my things, paid my bill, and stepped outside. A black sedan idled at the curb, the window lowered, revealing a driver in a dark suit. Morning delivery, he said smoothly. I approached cautiously. Destination? Westridge Airfield. Your colleague is already en route. Something felt wrong. The Alliance woman hadn't mentioned going separately. I need to make a call first, I said, stepping back. The driver's expression hardened. No time. Schedule change. We need to move now. I backed away further. Sorry, not without confirmation. He opened his door. Miss K, we're trying to protect you. Get in the car. He knew my real name. The Alliance woman had only ever called me Mira. I turned and ran, Pepper keeping pace beside me. Behind me, car doors slammed. Male voices called out. I cut through an alley, emerging onto a busy street where early commuters provided momentary cover. My phone buzzed. The Alliance woman, do not get in any car. Security breach. Stay public. I ducked into a subway station, buying a ticket with cash. The platform was crowded with morning passengers. I blended in, heart hammering against my ribs. The train arrived. I boarded, choosing a center car filled with commuters. As doors began closing, two men in dark suits rushed onto the platform. They scanned the windows desperately, but the train pulled away before they could spot me. My phone buzzed again. Go to Central Station, Northeast entrance, blue jacket, red backpack. 20 minutes later, I emerged from the subway at Central Station. The morning rush provided perfect cover as I navigated toward the Northeast entrance. A woman in a blue jacket with a red backpack stood checking her phone. Patient protection, I said quietly as I approached. She nodded once. Follow me, don't speak. We walked briskly through the station to a service corridor, then through a door marked authorized personnel only. A van waited in a loading area, engine running. Gloria's team hired ex-intelligence contractors, the woman explained as we drove. They intercepted our communications last night. New plan activated. The commission meeting? Still happening. Different route. The van took a circuitous path through industrial areas before reaching a small private airstrip different from the original plan. A plain white jet waited on the tarmac. This will take you directly to the commission, she said. Our director is already there, preparing them. What about Pepper? I asked, nodding to my dog. He can board. We made arrangements. As we approached the plane, my phone buzzed one final time. An unknown number. You don't understand what you're doing. This goes beyond Gloria. Beyond one company. Stop now, and we can negotiate. Continue, and you'll regret it. D. Drake, making one last, desperate attempt. I showed the message to the Alliance woman. He's right about one thing, she said. This is bigger than Gloria. That's exactly why we need your testimony. We boarded the plane. As it taxied for takeoff, I opened my laptop and activated one final program I'd prepared. A comprehensive data package sent simultaneously to 17 news organizations and regulatory bodies worldwide. Even if something happened to me now, the evidence would survive. 3 hours later, I sat in a conference room at the Healthcare Oversight Commission headquarters. 8 serious-faced commissioners reviewed my evidence, while federal marshals stood guard outside. This algorithm specifically targeted early-stage interventions in low-income areas? Asked the chairwoman, her voice tight with controlled anger. Yes, I confirmed. The denial patterns were designed to appear random, while following specific demographic markers. And you have proof these patterns were intentional, not algorithmic bias? I pulled up the meeting recordings. Gloria's voice filled the room. The beauty is regulatory oversight only tracks denials that result in fatalities within a specific time frame. Drake's voice followed. 50 million in performance bonuses once fully implemented. Split between us. The commissioners exchanged glances. This is criminal, one murmured. There's more, I said, opening the final file. While infiltrating their system, I discovered connections to 7 other healthcare companies using variations of the same algorithm. Different interfaces, different names, same outcomes. I displayed a network map showing the connections, a web of deliberate patient harm spanning the entire healthcare industry. This isn't just about Gloria's team, I explained. They were perfecting what others were already doing. The entire system is built to deny care while appearing to follow regulations. The chairwoman leaned forward. What do you want, Ms. K? Justice, I answered simply. For my friend who died because of these denials. For thousands of others who suffered, I want the system dismantled. You realize taking on the entire healthcare industry is essentially declaring war? I thought of Lizzie, of her kindergartners making cards she never saw, of her hand in mine as monitors flatlined. The war was declared when they decided profit margins were worth more than human lives, I replied. I'm just fighting back. 3 days later, from a secured location, I watched Gloria being escorted from Healthcare Analytics Partners headquarters by federal agents. Drake followed in handcuffs, his carefully constructed innocence shattered by the evidence I'd provided. The commission had moved with unprecedented speed, working with the Justice Department to file criminal charges against all 5 executives. Other companies implicated in my evidence faced regulatory investigation and shareholder lawsuits. The industry-wide algorithm network was exposed across national news. Terms like algorithmic healthcare denial and systematic treatment obstruction entered the public vocabulary. Insurance companies, desperate to avoid Gloria's fate, began mass-approving previously denied claims. Treatments suddenly became available to patients who had been fighting for months or years. My clinic network reported the changes happening in real time, lives potentially saved by bureaucratic fear of being the next company exposed. The Alliance offered me a permanent position leading their algorithm investigation unit. With my identity now public, going back to anonymity was impossible. Instead, I would use my new platform to continue dismantling the system from the inside. 1 week after my testimony, I visited Lizzie's grave for the first time since beginning my infiltration mission. I placed fresh flowers beside her headstone and sat on the cool grass. It worked, I told her quietly. Not just Gloria's team, the whole system is cracking open. A gentle breeze rustled the cemetery trees. In my pocket, I carried dozens of messages from patients and families affected by my actions. People whose denied claims had suddenly been approved, whose treatments were now accessible. I kept my promise, I whispered. I found joy. It just looked like justice. The Alliance car waited at the cemetery entrance to take me to my next meeting, a congressional hearing where I would explain exactly how algorithms were being used to deny healthcare to those who needed it most. The fight wasn't over. The system wouldn't change overnight. Powerful interests would resist, regroup, try to undermine my credibility or limit the damage. But they had never faced someone with nothing left to lose, someone who had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, someone whose careful nature had transformed grief into methodical, unstoppable purpose. As I walked back to the car, my phone chimed with a message from the Alliance director. Breaking news. National Health Solutions CEO resigned. Board announced complete algorithm review and patient restitution fund. Another domino falling. The revenge I'd planned for 5 people in a conference room had cascaded into industry-wide reckoning. For Lizzie, for thousands of others. For a system that needed to be broken before it could be rebuilt. I typed a reply. This is just the beginning. Have you ever wanted to fight back against a system that seemed too big to change? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button for more stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary courage. Because sometimes the most powerful acts of justice start with a single person who refuses to look away.